They stamped his kennel card in red. Aggressive, do not touch, Dallas, Texas. It was a hot afternoon, the kind that made the concrete sweat in the air inside the shelter feel like a prison. I was halfway through the row of kennels when I heard it. The kind of bark that silences everything else. Kennel 14. I turned and the German Shepherd puppy on the other side of the gate exploded into motion. 6 months old, black and tan, eyes locked on mine like I was the enemy. He hurled himself at the metal bars chest first again and again. His claws scraped the floor like nails on glass. His growl was so deep it rattled my ribs. Volunteers avoided him. I watched one staff member glance down the hall and whisper, "That one? Don't go near it." I'd been working with dogs long enough to know better than to rush, but even I took a step back. His name was Walter. He wasn't just barking, he was warning. No, daring anyone to try. His teeth bared in a snarl so fierce I nearly turned away. His bed was shredded into confetti. Deep gouges marked the back wall. There was saliva caked on the bars like frost. This wasn't the usual kind of fear. This was the kind that had been cornered and called evil. I stood there longer than I should have, maybe too long. And just as I was about to walk away, something flickered. His eyes shifted. Not rage, recognition. For half a second, it looked like he saw me. Then it was gone, buried under another blast of barking. I didn't move, just reached into my pocket. The Milk-Bone treat felt warm in my palm. I crouched low, slow as fog, and slid it through the bars. It landed near his front paw. He froze. The growling stopped. He didn't lunge. He didn't bite. He didn't even sniff. He just stared at that little bone like it was something he'd forgotten existed. And then, without warning, he backed into the far corner and turned away. Not like a fighter, like a prisoner. The silence after his retreat was louder than his bark. Walter pressed himself so deep into the corner, it looked like he was trying to disappear into the wall. His tail curled under his belly, trembling, ears flattened. He wouldn't look at me. The Milk-Bone still lay untouched, just inches from where he'd stood moments ago. I stayed on the concrete, kneeling outside Kennel 14, like I had all the time in the world. Part of me did, part of him didn't. Dogs with red stamped cards don't stay long, especially not when space is low, especially not when they scare potential adopters just by breathing. My name is Marcus, and I've worked in rescue for years. I've seen broken dogs, feral dogs, mean dogs. Walter wasn't any of those, but it took me until that moment to admit what I was really seeing. I wasn't looking at an aggressive animal. I was looking at a puppy who had learned the only way to survive was to strike first, and even that armor was cracking. I reached into my bag, pulled out another Milk-Bone, and held it in my palm through the gate. Didn't toss it this time, just left it there open. Minutes passed. Kids ran by behind me laughing at a litter of lab mixes 2 kennels down. Adoption staff walked past me like I wasn't there. Walter didn't move. Then the smallest shift. His ears twitched. His head turned an inch. Just an inch. I didn't speak, didn't blink. The bone stayed steady in my hand. He sniffed the air once, then again. I heard the sharp exhale through his nose. Like he didn't trust it, like he didn't trust me. But trust wasn't what I needed right now. I just needed one step. And then slowly, like each movement hurt more than the last, Walter uncurled from his ball in the corner. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He lowered his head and took one silent step forward. The chain on the wall swayed gently, catching light. Then came the second step, and I knew he wanted to believe I wouldn't hurt him. That second step was heavier than the first. Walter's paws moved like they were weighted with doubt. He didn't make eye contact. His gaze stayed low, fixed on the floor, on the space between us. Every inch closer was a gamble he hadn't dared take before. His breathing was fast but shallow, controlled. Not panic, not yet. I kept my body still. No sudden movements, no leaning in, just open hands, soft shoulders, silence. 3 steps in, he paused again. Close now. Close enough that I could see the fine tremor in his legs, the way his claws gripped the concrete for balance. This wasn't progress. This was courage. I knew better than to reach through the bars. That's how trust gets broken. Instead, I slowly leaned my head forward just a little so he could study my face. "You're okay," I whispered. His ears twitched, but he didn't move away. That in itself was a victory. I watched as his nose tilted slightly upward. He sniffed the air, nostrils flaring, and then barely his tongue flicked out to taste it. I knew that gesture. That was curiosity. For the first time since I'd seen him, Walter looked up and I saw it. Not rage, not defiance, not warning. I saw grief. It was in the slant of his brow, the glassy wetness in his eyes. The kind of look dogs get when they've waited too long for someone who never came back. Suddenly his body tensed, not in fear, in decision. Walter closed the final distance and sat stiff, but present just behind the bars in front of me. His chest rose and felt like a heartbeat out of rhythm. I didn't move, didn't dare ruin it. Then without warning, he lay down, not collapsed, lowered himself deliberately, head resting on his paws, still watching me. The war in his body had stopped. He wasn't surrendering. He was testing the idea that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to fight. His eyes never left mine. Even with his head on his paws, Walter tracked every breath I took, every blink, every shift in my weight. He didn't trust me yet, but for the first time, he wasn't preparing to be hurt. He was preparing for the possibility he wouldn't be. I sat with him like that for almost 20 minutes. The shelter moved on around us. People came and went. Doors clanged. Puppies yelped. Adoption bells rang. No one stopped at Kennel 14. I didn't leave. Walter didn't move. At some point, I began talking to him. Not loud, not sweet, not even coaxing, just steady, like I was telling a story we both already knew but needed to hear again. "You're not what they say you are." His ears twitched. "You're not dangerous. You're scared." A shift in his brow. "You're not alone anymore." It was then I realized I was whispering not just to him, but to something inside me too. I'd seen this kind of hurt before. I'd carried it. I'd worn it like armor, just like he did. And now he was the one reminding me what it looked like from the outside. Eventually, a shadow passed over us. It was Tessa, one of the shelter managers. She stopped a few feet behind me and crossed her arms. "Marcus," she said under her breath. "He's not a candidate." I didn't turn. "He's a liability," she continued. "We've had complaints. Staff won't go near him. It's not personal." But it was. It was personal to him, and it was about to become personal to me. I finally stood and faced her. "Give me a week," I said. She blinked. "A week?" I nodded with just me. No one else. No pressure. "Let me prove he's not what that card says." She didn't answer right away, but when she finally nodded and walked away, I turned back and Walter was still there, still lying down, still watching. The next morning I got to the shelter before the doors unlocked. The sun had barely crested the Dallas skyline, but I didn't care. I had one goal, Walter. I walked past the front kennels, past the staff room, straight to the isolation row, where they kept dogs flagged as aggressive. Kennel 14 was exactly as I'd left it. Metal bars, shredded bedding, the red card still zip-tied to the front like a death sentence. But Walter was sitting up, not barking, not pacing, just sitting, waiting. When he saw me, his ears went back, but he didn't lunge. He didn't growl. He stood stretched stiffly like he wasn't used to sleeping through the night, and took 2 slow steps forward. It nearly broke me. I unlocked the side panel of the kennel and slipped in a small padded mat. Then I pulled out a soft cloth leash. No loops, no tug, just something light to introduce the idea of connection. Walter didn't flinch. He didn't move closer either, but he stayed still. That was enough. For the next hour, I sat on the floor just outside his kennel and read out loud. An old paperback, half the cover torn. I don't even remember the story, but the rhythm, the sound, the consistency, it mattered. He watched me the whole time, his head tilted once, then again. When I finally paused, I let the silence fill the space. Walter stood, walked to the bars and lowered his head, and slowly his nose pressed through. He sniffed the cuff of my jeans. 1 breath, 2, then he licked it just once. It wasn't affection, it wasn't trust, it was a question, and I had only one answer. "I'm here, buddy." He didn't back away. He laid down right there, nose still near my shoe. And for the first time since arriving at the shelter, Walter closed his eyes. I barely breathed. Walter's eyes remained shut, his body curled loosely, not tight like a coiled spring, but soft like a dog that had finally let go of the fear gnawing at his bones. I stayed frozen, terrified that even the sound of shifting my weight might snap the thread we'd spun between us. The hallway behind me echoed with the usual chaos of shelter mornings. Kennels being cleaned, bowls filled, leashes clipped, voices calling names. But in that small pocket of space between Walter and me, there was quiet, a kind of peace neither of us had earned yet, but both of us needed. That's when a loud clang broke it. Someone dropped a mop bucket down the row. Walter's eyes snapped open, his body tensed, ears straight up. He surged backward before his mind caught up with his legs, and he hit the kennel wall with a dull thud. The growl returned, not full force, but raw, guttural, like a reflex his heart hadn't had time to unlearn. And just like that, the label came flooding back. Aggressive, dangerous, untouchable. My stomach dropped. He paced in a frantic figure 8, eyes wild, tail rigid. The leash I'd left curled in the corner was now something to avoid. He snarled once, not at me, but at the air, at the sound, at the ghost clawing his ribs. I stood up slowly. "It's okay," I whispered, even though it wasn't. He snapped at nothing, then slammed his paw into the food bowl, sending kibble scattering across the floor. The chaos in his mind had become a storm, and I couldn't reach him through it. Not yet, but I didn't walk away. Instead, I sat back down, legs crossed, hands in my lap, and I waited. Minutes passed, then more. The storm began to die. His steps slowed, his tail dropped, his body slumped back into the corner. This wasn't failure, it was the truth. Walter wasn't healed. He was just starting to believe healing was possible. The next day I came back with no expectations, only presence. Walter was curled in the corner when I arrived, eyes open, watching the world like it was something that owed him an apology. He didn't growl, didn't bark, but he didn't rise either. I sat outside Kennel 14 and leaned against the wall. No treats, no leash, just me. He watched. I waited. 10 minutes passed before he stood, 20 before he approached. When he finally reached the gate, he didn't sniff my hand. He didn't lick my jeans. He simply sat down, not across the kennel, right in front of me. The bars were still between us, but something else wasn't. His eyes had changed. They no longer scanned for threats. They searched for something else, something older, deeper, recognition. I slid the leash toward him again. This time he didn't flinch. He didn't touch it, but he let it rest between his paws. I couldn't help it. My throat tightened. "You're doing good, Walter." He blinked slowly. Not long after, Tessa came by with a clipboard. She kept her voice low. "We've got a big adoption event this weekend." She said, "We'll need space. Just keep that in mind." It wasn't a threat, it was logistics. But Walter didn't understand logistics. He only knew that people came and went, and no one ever came back for him. I looked at her and said, she raised a brow. "He's not cleared. He will be." There was a pause, then a sigh. "You've got 3 days." I turned back to Walter. 3 days to show the world he was more than a red stamp. 3 days to help him remember what it felt like to be seen. He stood up, stretched, and nudged the leash gently with his nose. I think he already knew. Day 1 of our countdown started before sunrise. I arrived at the shelter before the lights flicked on. The building was still asleep, but I wasn't. My heart beat with quiet urgency. 3 days wasn't a challenge. It was a plea for a miracle. Walter was waiting at the front of the kennel. No growling, no barking, just a soft tap of his tail on the floor when he saw me. That sound, it nearly shattered me. I unlocked the gate for the first time. Slowly, no sudden moves, no eye contact. I let the door swing open an inch, then 2. He didn't charge. He stepped back, cautious, eyes darting between the door and my face. I crouched low, keeping it loose, light like a ribbon instead of a rope. Walter watched every inch of it. When I reached out, he froze. His ears pinned, his chest heaved once, and I saw the war ignite behind his eyes. But he didn't run. I clipped it on. The leash clicked. Walter didn't snap. He didn't pull. He stood still, blinking hard like he couldn't believe what just happened. Then slowly I backed out of the kennel, leash loose in hand, and said the softest thing I could manage. "Let's go, bud." He followed. The hallway was chaos. Barking, movement, smells, strangers. I felt him stiffen, his legs go taut, his tail dropped again. But he didn't bolt. He stayed beside me. We made it outside. The second his paws hit grass, something shifted. Walter froze, nostrils flaring, chest expanding, his eyes locked on a butterfly flitting through a sunbeam. Then he lowered his nose and touched the dirt. Real earth, not concrete. He blinked, sneezed once, and for the first time, his whole body relaxed. He lay down in the grass, not because he was afraid, because he chose to. And when I sat beside him, his head nudged my leg. I didn't move. I just let the moment breathe. Walter had walked out of that kennel like a ghost, unsure of his own story. But now he was starting to remember he was still alive. On day 2, he wagged his tail when he saw me. Not frantic, not unsure, just one solid thump against the floor as I rounded the corner. His ears perked, his head tilted, and when I unlatched the kennel door, he didn't retreat. He stepped forward, leash already in his mind. I clipped it on without hesitation. He didn't flinch. That alone felt like a small resurrection. Outdoors, the shelter yard buzzed with activity. Volunteers walked dogs. Potential adopters browsed behind fences. Walter stuck close, body tense, but eyes wide with curiosity. Every car door slam, every child's laugh made him startle. But he didn't fold. He watched the other dogs play, watched a golden retriever bounce after a tennis ball, watched a husky pup roll in the mud, and I swear I saw something flicker in his eyes. Longing, a memory he couldn't fully hold, but wasn't ready to let go of. We sat under a tree. I let the leash go slack. Walter stayed by my side. Then something miraculous happened. A small black and white terrier ran toward us, leash trailing, tongue out, chaotic energy bottled in fur. The kind of approach that used to trigger Walter's defenses. I tensed. Walter didn't. He stood stiff, alert, tail low. The terrier bounced around him, sniffed his ear, wagged like a metronome on caffeine. Walter didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth. He turned, sniffed back, and so gently gave one polite lick behind the other dog's ear. I nearly cried right there. He was rewriting his instincts. The volunteer came running, apologizing for the loose leash. I waved it off, still stunned. Walter watched the terrier run off again, then looked at me. For once, I didn't see fear in that face. I saw permission, like he was asking if maybe, just maybe, he could try being a puppy again. And I silently promised him, "You don't have to ask, you already are." The morning of the event, Walter walked beside me without a leash. It wasn't official. Shelter policies still required one. But between Kennel 14 and the adoption yard, that short hallway belonged to us. No tug, no commands, just quiet steps in sync, like we'd been doing this for years. He wore a green bandana someone from the front desk had tied around his neck. It read, "Looking for my person." I stared at those words longer than I should have, because I knew what they didn't. Walter had already chosen his. The yard was full. Families browsing, kids holding leashes too big for them, adoption counselors answering rapid-fire questions. Fold-out tents offered water bowls and shade, and in the far corner, a photo booth with a big white sign. "Meet your new best friend." I found a quiet spot under the old elm tree and sat. Walter lay down beside me, back legs stretched, front paws crossed like he belonged here. Like the red stamped card never existed. People passed us by. Some slowed, smiled, but none stopped. "Is he friendly?" a woman asked from 10 feet away. "Yes," I said too quickly. She moved on. Another family, mom, dad, 2 kids, pointed at a golden retriever in the next pen. Laughed, took pictures. Walter didn't react. He rested his head on my boot. And then a boy, maybe 7, maybe 8. Quiet, thin, holding his dad's hand like it was the only thing keeping him standing. They walked past the crowd, past the tables, past the barking, and stopped in front of us. The boy let go of his father's hand. He knelt. Walter looked up. No growl, no freeze, just a slow, curious lift of his head. The boy didn't speak. He didn't have to. He reached forward, open-palmed, and placed his small hand gently between Walter's ears. Walter leaned into it. I didn't breathe. The boy scratched his neck, then hugged him, softly but fully. And Walter closed his eyes, not because he was afraid, because for the first time in his life, he was home. We finalized the adoption papers that afternoon. The boy's name was Eli. His father, Jordan, said they hadn't planned on adopting. They were just looking, he'd said. But when I saw the way Eli clung to Walter's neck, as if he'd found the missing piece of something he didn't know he'd lost, I knew this wasn't about planning. This was about healing. Eli had been through things. Jordan didn't say much, but he didn't need to. I saw it in the boy's silence, that the way he flinched at loud barks, the way he stayed close to Walter's side like it was the only safe place in the world. And Walter, he didn't leave him, didn't bark, didn't break away. He stayed. Even when the camera flashed for their adoption photo, Walter didn't shy from the light. He stood proudly beside Eli, one paw forward like he was claiming his role right then and there. Protector, companion, brother. Tessa came over quietly, holding Walter's intake file. She looked down at the red stamped card still clipped to the back of it. Her fingers hovered over it. Then she ripped it in half. No ceremony, no speech, just a silent acknowledgement that Walter had rewritten his story. We all watched as Eli walked him toward the parking lot, leash in hand, green bandana still tied around his neck. Walter glanced back at me once, not confused, not afraid, just to say goodbye. I gave a small wave, not trusting my voice. He turned back toward the car and climbed in beside the boy. Two shadows, two survivors driving off into something better. And in the silence that followed, Kennel 14 stood empty for the first time in months. But somehow the place felt fuller than ever. They called him aggressive. They labeled him dangerous, stamped his name in red, and tucked him away like a secret no one wanted to face. But Walter wasn't a monster. He was a mirror, reflecting back everything we choose not to see in the broken, the frightened, the misunderstood. He taught me that fear wears many masks, that even the loudest bark can be a cry for help, that sometimes the fiercest creatures are just waiting for someone to kneel, to listen, to stay. And when I saw him walk away beside that quiet boy with his head held high, steps steady, tail gently wagging, I didn't see a rescue. I saw a rebirth. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. Walter didn't just find a home. He found someone who looked at him and didn't see a warning sign, but a second chance. How many more are still waiting behind metal bars, misunderstood, mislabeled, and nearly forgotten? If this story touched you, share it. Tell someone. Spread the word, because every time you do, you help change the ending for another soul like Walter. Don't forget to subscribe our channel, The Animals 2.0.